The grand chamber of the Velthari Empire was the largest room ever built by any species in the galaxy. Its walls stretched upward for almost a mile, made of black crystal that had been mined from dying stars. The ceiling showed a live picture of space itself, with 10,000 conquered worlds spinning slowly like jewels on display. Every species that entered this room was meant to feel small. Every visitor was meant to understand their place in the universe. Today, the chamber was full. Admirals stood in long rows, their gray-scaled bodies covered in medals and honors from 100 wars. Politicians whispered to each other behind their hands. Soldiers lined the walls, holding weapons that could burn through steel like paper. At the center of it all, sitting on a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian, was High Emperor Morath. Morath was old, even by Velthari standards. He had ruled for 600 years. He had personally ordered the destruction of 12 species who had refused to bow. His name was spoken with fear across 1,000 star systems. When he moved, the entire chamber fell silent. And standing before him, alone in the center of that massive room, was a single human. Ambassador Jack Cole did not look impressive. He was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. His suit was slightly wrinkled from the long journey. Under his arm, he carried a folded newspaper, which he had been reading during the 3-hour wait for the Emperor to arrive. He looked like a man waiting for a bus, not a man standing before the ruler of the galaxy. The Velthari found this amusing. Several admirals made quiet jokes about the primitive human and his paper-reading material. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as a backward species. They had only discovered space travel 300 years ago. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. They argued among themselves constantly. The Empire had been watching them for centuries, waiting for the right moment to add Earth to their collection. That moment had come. High Emperor Morath raised one clawed hand, and the chamber fell completely silent. His voice, deep and cold, echoed off the crystal walls. "Humanity," he said. "Your expansion into the Orion Corridor ends today. For 300 years, the Empire has tolerated your presence. We have watched you spread to nearby stars. We have allowed you to build your little colonies. That tolerance is now finished." Jack Cole said nothing. He simply listened, his face showing no expression at all. Morath continued. "Your species has 2 choices. You may surrender now, give up your colonies, and accept your place as servants of the Empire. Your people will work in our mines and factories. Your world will pay tribute to us forever. This is the merciful option." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "Or you may refuse, and we will burn your worlds to ash. We will hunt your species to extinction. Your children will forget that Earth ever existed. This is the alternative." A holographic document appeared in the air between them. It was a formal declaration of war, written in the ancient Velthari language, signed with the Emperor's own seal. The admirals shifted with excitement. They had crushed 4,000 species using this same method. Humanity would be the easiest conquest yet. "The choice," Morath said, "is yours." The entire chamber waited. 10,000 eyes watched the human ambassador. They expected begging. They expected tears. They expected the same desperate pleas they had heard from so many species before. Jack Cole looked at the declaration floating in the air. He read it slowly, his lips moving slightly. Then he did something that no one in that chamber expected. He chuckled. It was a quiet sound, almost gentle. But in the silence of the grand chamber, it echoed like thunder. The admirals looked at each other in confusion. The politicians stopped whispering. Even Morath seemed surprised. Then Jack unfolded his newspaper and began to read. "Did you hear me, human?" Morath snarled, his voice rising with anger. "I have declared war upon your kind. I am offering you the chance to save your species from destruction. And you read your primitive paper? Tenny-4. Tenny-4 paper. Tenny-4 paper wherefore? Tenny-4 paper. Tenny-4 paper. Tenny-4 paper wherefore paper." Jack held up one finger, asking for a moment. He flipped through the pages calmly, searching for something specific. The Emperor's scales began to change color, shifting from gray to deep red. This was a sign of extreme anger among the Velthari. Guards stepped forward, weapons raised. "Found it," Jack said finally. He folded the newspaper and tucked it back under his arm. Then he looked up at the Emperor with an expression that was almost friendly. "Yeah, I caught your declaration," he said. "Pretty speech. Very dramatic. But I was just checking something in the news." "Checking what?" Morath demanded. "Checking when your little announcement hit our feeds back home." Jack smiled. "Turns out it was about 6 hours ago. Earth time. Anyway." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "And what difference does that make?" Jack checked his watch. It was an old mechanical thing, completely out of place in a galaxy of advanced technology. He tapped the glass face thoughtfully. "Well, you see, the thing about humans is that we really do not like being threatened. It is kind of a cultural thing, goes back thousands of years. Someone points a weapon at us, we tend to point one back." He looked up at the Emperor with those tired eyes. "Your declaration gave us 6 hours warning. That is a lot of time. We do a lot with 6 hours." Somewhere in the chamber, a communication device began to beep. Then another. Then dozens. The admirals reached for their screens, their faces shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked very much like fear. "Our response," Jack said calmly, "should be arriving right about now." The ceiling display flickered. The image of conquered worlds disappeared, replaced by something new. Ships. Human ships. Millions of them, appearing from nowhere, surrounding every major Velthari system simultaneously. Jack Cole straightened his wrinkled suit and smiled at the High Emperor. "Now then," he said, "shall we discuss terms?" "I believe you were talking about choices." 300 years before the Emperor's declaration, a small ship landed in a field outside Chicago. The Velthari scouts who stepped out expected to find primitive creatures. They expected mud huts and simple tools. Instead, they found cities of glass and steel, machines that flew through the air, and weapons that could level mountains. Humanity was young, yes. But humanity was not stupid. Dr. Lisa Park was 28 years old when she joined the Welcome Committee. She was a physicist who studied the stars, dreaming of the day humans would travel to them. When she saw the alien ship descend from the clouds, she felt her heart fill with hope. First contact with intelligent life, the beginning of a new age. Then she met the Velthari. They were polite, in their own way. They smiled with their thin lips and spoke through translation machines. They called humans interesting and promising. They offered friendship and trade, but Lisa was a scientist. She watched, and she listened. And she saw what lay behind their friendly words. She saw how they looked at human cities the way a farmer looks at livestock. She saw how they cataloged human weapons and laughed quietly among themselves. She noticed how they asked careful questions about human population numbers, about resource locations, about military strength. These were not questions from friends. These were questions from hunters studying their prey. Lisa returned to Earth with a single recommendation for the world governments. 3 words that would shape human history for the next 3 centuries. Hide everything. The plan began small. Human scientists studied the Velthari technology left behind and learned its secrets. They discovered that the aliens used something called fold space travel, bending the universe to move quickly between stars. Within 10 years, humans had built their own version. It was faster and more efficient than anything the Velthari had, but they did not use it openly. Instead, humanity built 2 faces. The public face was weak and primitive. Slow ships with basic engines. Simple weapons that could barely scratch alien armor. Politicians who bowed and smiled and acted grateful for any scrap of attention from the great empire. The hidden face was something else entirely. General Mike Torres took command of the secret military program when he was just 30 years old. He was a soldier who had grown up reading history, studying every war humanity had ever fought. He knew something that the aliens did not understand. Humans were survivors. They had crawled out of caves and conquered their own planet. They had survived ice ages and plagues and countless wars against themselves. They were very, very good at not dying. Under his command, shipyards were built inside the clouds of Jupiter, hidden from any sensor technology. Weapons laboratories were buried deep beneath the surface of Mars. Training facilities were constructed in the empty darkness between stars, where no alien patrol would ever think to look. The first human battleship was completed 40 years after first contact. It was called the Silent Thunder, and it could destroy an entire Velthari fleet by itself. Mike Torres stood on its bridge and watched it fire for the first time. The weapon beam was invisible to normal eyes. It moved faster than light itself. The target asteroid simply ceased to exist. Good, Mike said quietly. Build more. By the time the Emperor made his declaration, humanity had built 12 million ships. Each one was better than anything the Empire possessed. Each one was crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. But ships were only part of the secret. Humanity had been collecting information for 3 centuries. Every alien species that visited Earth was studied carefully. Their technology was analyzed and improved. Their weaknesses were catalogued and filed away. Human spies moved through the galaxy disguised as humble traders and workers, mapping every system, learning every secret. The Velthari thought they knew everything about humanity. They had files and reports going back 300 years. But every piece of information they possessed was a lie, carefully crafted to make them feel superior. They believed humans were primitive because humans wanted them to believe it. Lisa Park was now 128 years old. Human medical technology had advanced far beyond what the aliens knew. She had watched the plan unfold across her entire long life. She had helped design the ships that would defend Earth. She had trained the scientists who created their weapons. When the Emperor's declaration reached Earth, Lisa was sitting in a garden in Seoul, drinking tea. Her assistant rushed to her with the news, eyes wide with fear. "Dr. Park, the aliens have declared war. What do we do?" Lisa set down her teacup and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We do what we have been preparing to do for 300 years, she said. "We show them who we really are." Talk sound. Across the planet, sirens began to sound. Not sirens of fear or warning. These were different. These were the sirens that called soldiers to battle. The sirens that woke the sleeping giant. In hidden bases around the world, crews rushed to their ships. In orbital stations, disguised as debris, weapon systems powered up for the first time. In the darkness between stars, 12 million vessels received the same message. Sent from Earth, with 2 simple words: green light. Mike Torres, now 94 years old but still sharp as a blade, stood in the command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens around him showed the positions of every human ship, every weapon platform, every soldier ready for battle. He had spent 60 years preparing for this day. He had prayed it would never come. But he had known, deep in his heart, that it would. "All units," he said into the communication system, his voice calm and steady. "This is General Torres. The enemy has made their choice. Now we make ours." He paused, looking at the faces of his officers around him. Young men and women who had grown up knowing this day might come, who had trained and sacrificed, and waited. Show them what humanity can do. Admiral Thorne had conquered 60 worlds in his career. He had burned cities and crushed armies. He had watched entire species kneel before the power of the Velthari Empire. When the Emperor gave him command of the 7th Armada and ordered him to destroy Earth, he considered it an insult. 500,000 ships to conquer one primitive planet. It was like sending a flood to drown a single ant. His fleet emerged from fold space at the edge of the human solar system. 500,000 vessels stretched across the darkness, their weapons charged and ready. Thorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the distant blue dot that was Earth grow larger on his screens. "Begin Standard Conquest Protocol," he ordered. "Destroy their orbital defenses first. Then target major population centers. I want surrender within 6 hours. Unrind. I want surrender within 6 hours." His officers moved quickly, scanning the system for threats. The first reports came back within minutes. Thorne read them with a frown. No orbital defenses detected. No military installations, no armed stations, just a handful of primitive satellites and some small transport ships fleeing toward the outer planets. "They have nothing," his second officer said with a laugh. "The humans have absolutely nothing to fight us with. This will be the easiest victory in Empire history." Thorn nodded slowly. But something felt wrong. He had conquered 60 worlds. He had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, his instincts were screaming at him. "Send scouts ahead," he ordered. "I want full scans of everything in this system before we approach Earth." The scouts launched and spread out through the solar system. They passed the outer planets, the gas giants with their swirling storms and countless moons. They detected nothing unusual, just rocks and ice and empty space. Then one scout passed close to an asteroid near Jupiter. Its sensors detected a strange energy reading. Before the pilot could report, his ship simply vanished. No explosion. No distress call. Just gone. Thorn leaned forward in his chair. "What happened to Scout 7? "Unknown, Admiral. We lost all contact. Another scout disappeared near Saturn, then another near Mars. One by one, ships were vanishing without explanation." Thorn felt cold fear creep up his spine. In 60 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. "All ships," he commanded. "Full battle formation. Something is hunting us." 500,000 ships moved into defensive positions. Weapons powered up, shields activated. The most powerful armada in the galaxy prepared for battle. And then the moon moved. Not Earth's moon. One of the small moons of Jupiter. Barely 100 miles across. It broke orbit and accelerated toward the Velthari fleet at impossible speed. Thorn's officers stared at their screens in disbelief. "That is not a moon," someone whispered. They were right. The surface cracked and fell away, revealing what lay beneath. Metal. Weapons. Engines. It was a ship, a human ship, larger than anything the Empire had ever built. And it was not alone. Across the solar system, asteroids split open. Moons revealed their true nature. Debris fields assembled themselves into massive structures. Humanity's real fleet emerged from hiding, filling the darkness with steel and fire. Commander Amy Reed stood on the bridge of the battle station Defiance, watching the tactical display light up with targets. She was 32 years old, the daughter of colonists who had died when the Velthari inspected Mars. She had joined the military at 16. She had trained for this moment her entire adult life. "They are in the kill box," her weapons officer reported. "All enemy vessels within range." Amy looked at the display. 500,000 alien ships, trapped between 12 hidden battle stations and surrounded by a fleet they never knew existed. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "All stations," she said, her voice steady and calm. "Weapons free." The universe turned white. Human weapons technology had advanced beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. Beam weapons that moved faster than light. Missiles that could track targets across star systems. Cannons that fired chunks of super-dense matter at near-light speed. Every battle station fired at once. Every ship in the hidden fleet opened up with everything they had. The Velthari 7th Armada lasted exactly 4 minutes. Admiral Thorn never saw the weapon that killed him. One moment he was shouting orders, trying to organize a retreat. The next moment, his flagship was atoms. Around him, 500,000 ships suffered the same fate. They tried to fight back, but their weapons could not scratch human shields. They tried to run, but human ships were faster. They tried to surrender, but no one was listening. 4 minutes, 500,000 ships, 3 million Velthari soldiers, gone. When the last enemy vessel was destroyed, Amy Reed sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had trained for this. But training was different from reality. She had just killed 3 million living beings in 4 minutes. "Commander," her communications officer said, "Earth Command is asking for a status report." Amy nodded. "Tell them the solar system is secure. Enemy fleet destroyed. 0 human casualties." She looked out the viewport at the debris field that had once been an armada. Twisted metal and frozen bodies drifted through the darkness. Somewhere in that mess was what remained of Admiral Thorne, who had conquered 60 worlds and thought Earth would be his easiest victory. Also tell them, Amy added quietly, that Phase 1 is complete. We are ready for Phase 2. On Earth, the news of the victory was broadcast briefly between weather reports and sports scores. Most people were more interested in the baseball playoffs. The Velthari had threatened to destroy their world, and humanity had responded by destroying the threat. It was not the end of the war, it was only the beginning. But for the first time in 300 years, humanity no longer had to hide. And the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. High Emperor Morath stared at the tactical display in his throne room, watching symbols disappear one by one. Each symbol represented a ship. Each disappearing light meant hundreds of dead soldiers. In less than 5 minutes, his entire 7th Armada had been erased from existence. The admirals around him stood in stunned silence. These were warriors who had conquered thousands of worlds. They had never seen anything like this. They had never imagined anything like this was possible. There must be a malfunction, Admiral Kress said, his voice shaking. Our communications are damaged. The fleet is still there. They must be. Morath said nothing. He knew the truth. He had ruled for 600 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He knew what destruction looked like. And he was looking at it now. The human ambassador, Jack Cole, still stood in the center of the chamber. He had not moved since the battle began. He simply waited, watching the Velthari faces shift from arrogance to confusion to fear. When the last symbol vanished from the display, he checked his watch again. 4 minutes, he said calmly. Actually faster than we expected. Our people have been practicing. Impossible, Morath whispered. Your species is primitive. You have no technology. You have no weapons. Jack smiled. It was a small, tired smile. Yeah, about that. We may have been a little dishonest over the past few centuries. Sorry about the confusion. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. Ancient crystal that had stood for 10,000 years shattered like glass. Through the smoke and debris came figures in black armor. Moving faster than any Velthari eye could follow, they carried weapons that hummed with energy. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading through the chamber like shadows. The Imperial Guards raised their weapons to fight. They were the finest soldiers in the Empire, trained from birth for combat. The first guard fired at an approaching human, his beam weapon striking the black armor directly. The human did not even slow down. The beam scattered harmlessly off the armor surface. The soldier continued forward and struck the guard with one armored fist. The guard flew across the room and did not get up. The battle lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, every Imperial Guard was on the ground. Not dead, but broken and beaten. The black-armored soldiers stood in formation, weapons pointed at the admirals, at the politicians, at the Emperor himself. Through the ruined doors walked a woman. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive. But she carried herself like someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side. Her armor was different from the others, marked with symbols that the Velthari did not recognize. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. High Emperor Morath, she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. My name is Colonel Beth Young, commander of Earth's Rapid Response Division. On behalf of the United Human Coalition, I am here to discuss terms. Morath found his voice. How did you get here? Our planet is 400 light-years from Earth. Our detection systems show no approaching ships. This is impossible. Beth smiled. We have been developing transportation technology that the Empire has never seen. Fold space was impressive 300 years ago. We have moved past it. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed the galaxy, with thousands of points of light representing Velthari systems. Around each point were clusters of other lights, red and threatening. This is the current position of the human fleet, Beth explained. 12 million vessels, currently surrounding every major system in your empire. Your shipyards, your military bases, your capital worlds, all of them. The admirals looked at each other with naked terror. Admiral Kress stepped forward, his scales pale with fear. "This cannot be," he said. "We have patrolled our borders for centuries. We have sensors on every approach route. No fleet could have reached these positions without being detected." "Your sensors are watching the wrong places," Beth replied. "You look for ships in normal space. Our fleet travels through dimensions you do not even know exist." Ambassador Jack Cole walked through the ruined doors, still carrying his newspaper. He stepped over broken crystal and unconscious guards, nodding politely to the admirals as he passed. He climbed the steps of the obsidian throne and sat down casually, just below where the Emperor sat frozen in shock. "Here is how this works," Jack said, unfolding his paper again. "You declared war on us. Big mistake, by the way. Really should have done more research. But what is done is done." He looked up at Morath with tired eyes that held no mercy. "You have two options. Option 1. Unconditional surrender. You release every species currently enslaved by the Empire. You disband your military. You submit to human oversight for the next 100 years while we make sure you do not cause any more trouble." "And option 2? Morath asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jack gestured at the holographic display. "Option 2 is that we take apart your empire system by system. We have already destroyed 500,000 of your ships in 4 minutes. We can destroy 500,000 more. We can keep destroying until there is nothing left to destroy." He turned a page of his newspaper. "Personally, I recommend option 1. Less paperwork." Colonel Beth Young stepped closer to the throne. "I know what you are thinking, Emperor. You are thinking that we are bluffing. That we cannot possibly be as strong as we claim. That if you just hold out long enough, you will find a weakness." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "The 7th Armada thought the same thing. 3 million of your soldiers learned the truth 4 minutes before they died. Do not make their mistake." The chamber was silent. The admirals looked at their emperor, waiting for guidance. The politicians trembled. The broken guards groaned on the floor. High Emperor Morath, ruler of 10,000 worlds, conqueror of 4,000 species, looked into the eyes of a human woman and saw his future ending. "I accept," he whispered. "Option 1. We surrender." Jack Cole nodded and folded his newspaper. "Smart choice. Now, shall we discuss the details?" 3 months passed like a dream the galaxy could not wake from. The Velthari Empire, which had ruled for 20,000 years, ceased to exist in 90 days. Not through violence, not through destruction. Humanity had proven it could destroy anything it wanted. Instead, it chose to build something new. Ambassador Jack Cole became the first human governor of galactic affairs. He moved into the conquered palace on the Velthari homeworld. Though he refused to use the obsidian throne, he had it removed and replaced with a simple wooden desk, shipped all the way from Earth. He sat behind that desk 18 hours a day, meeting with representatives from 10,000 worlds, listening to their grievances, helping them rebuild. "You could have killed them all," an aide told him once. "The Velthari enslaved billions. They destroyed entire species. No one would have blamed you." Jack looked up from his paperwork, his tired eyes thoughtful. "Maybe. But that is not who we are. Never has been. We fight when we have to. We defend what matters, but we do not become the monsters we fight against." He returned to his documents. "Besides, revenge does not build anything, and we have a lot of building to do." Colonel Beth Young was promoted to Admiral of the Coalition Fleet. She spent her days traveling from system to system, helping former slave worlds establish their own defenses. Many species had forgotten how to fight. They had spent centuries under Velthari rule, their warriors killed, their weapons destroyed. Beth taught them everything humanity knew about war. "Why help us?" asked a leader of the Taurani, a species that had been enslaved for 400 years. "You could rule us all. You have the power." Beth shook her head. "Power without purpose is just tyranny. We want partners, not subjects. When the next threat comes, and there will always be a next threat, we want allies standing beside us, not slaves kneeling behind us. The Torani leader studied her face for a long moment. You are strange creatures, you humans. We get that a lot. General Mike Torres finally retired at the age of 94. He had spent 60 years preparing humanity for a war that lasted less than a week. Some people said he had wasted his life. Mike did not see it that way. Every day that war did not come was a victory, he told the young officers at his retirement ceremony. Every year our children grew up in peace was worth the sacrifice. We prepared for the worst so that our people could live their best. He spent his final years teaching history at a university that accepted students from across the galaxy. Alien children sat beside human children, learning about wars that had shaped the universe. Mike told them stories of ancient battles, of heroes and villains, of the terrible price of violence and the precious value of peace. Remember, he would say at the end of each class, the goal is never to fight. The goal is to be so prepared that no one dares start a fight with you. And if they do start one, you finish it fast enough that it never happens again. But the most important moment came 6 months after the war ended, when the new Galactic Assembly met for the first time. 10,000 species sent representatives to the great chamber that had once held the Velthari throne. Humans had rebuilt it completely. The black crystal was gone, replaced by white stone that let in natural sunlight. The ceiling no longer showed conquered worlds. Instead, it displayed a simple image of the galaxy itself, with every inhabited world marked as an equal point of light. Dr. Lisa Park stood at the center of the chamber. She was 128 years old now. Her hair white as snow, her body thin and fragile, but her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried across the vast room without amplification. For 3 centuries, she began, you looked at humanity and saw weakness. You saw a species that fought among itself. You saw a species that struggled with disease and poverty and injustice. You saw a species that could not agree on anything, that argued and debated, and sometimes even killed each other over small differences. She paused, letting her words sink in. You thought these things made us inferior. You thought our struggles proved we were not ready for the galaxy. You were wrong. She walked slowly across the stage, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Our struggles made us strong. Every war we fought taught us how to fight better. Every disease we cured taught us how to heal. Every argument we had taught us how to listen, how to compromise, how to find common ground with those who think differently. She stopped and faced the assembly directly. We did not hide our true power because we were afraid of you. We hid it because we were afraid of ourselves. We knew what we could do. We knew that if we revealed our strength too soon, we might be tempted to use it. To conquer instead of cooperate. To rule instead of serve. Lisa smiled, and despite her age, there was something fierce in that smile. We waited until we were sure that we would not become the monsters we prepared to fight. Sure that our power would be used for protection, not domination. Sure that humanity had grown enough to be trusted with the strength we had built. She raised one thin hand and pointed at the ceiling, at the map of the galaxy with its countless points of light. Every world you see above you is free now. Free because humanity chose to free them. Free because when we had the power to enslave, we chose liberation instead. Free because that is who we are. Her voice hardened. But make no mistake, we did not free you because we are weak. We freed you because we are strong enough to make that choice. And anyone who threatens these worlds, anyone who tries to rebuild the chains we broke, anyone who mistakes our mercy for weakness, will learn what the Velthari learned. She paused, and the entire assembly held its breath. Humans do not start fights, we end them. And we end them in ways that no one ever forgets. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single pair of hands began to clap. Then another. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Species that had been enslaved for centuries. Species that had watched their worlds burn. Species that had given up hope, All rose to their feet and applauded. Lisa Park stood in the center of that vast chamber, surrounded by 10,000 species who had once seen humanity as primitive and weak. Now they saw something else. They saw hope. They saw protection. They saw the future. And somewhere in the crowd, Ambassador Jack Cole smiled and reached into his pocket for his newspaper. "Good speech," he muttered to Colonel Beth Young beside him. "Think they got the message?" Beth watched the cheering crowd and nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "I think they did."